the wounds of a man. It's difficult to win a war when most of your warriors are wounded. As believers, you and I are in a spiritual war. We are in a fight. And we are fighting for a more moral world. We are fighting, whether you know it or not, for the institution of marriage. We are fighting for sexual purity among our teenagers and our adults. We're in a fight for the physical and the emotional and the spiritual health of an entire generation. But it's difficult to win this kind of fight when the strongest among us, our men, have been wounded such that they have lost their will to fight. And on today, I want to talk about the common injuries of the male soul in our culture. And we've got to address these pains, these male wounds. We must address them in order for men to re-engage the battle for their best selves, to re-engage the battle for their families. We've got to address these wounds in order for us to engage the battle for better neighborhoods and better cities, and collectively for us to fight as Christ has placed us in the earth for a better world. Now, ladies, whatever you do, don't turn the channel today, because the same wounds that impact men impact you. I'm just tailoring them for men today. Here's the first wound, the father wound. The father wound. The most prevalent injury of the soul is the father injury. In fact, I don't know of any person in my network, any person in my world who does not have some kind of father pain, some kind of father wound, some kind of father injury. And this is what we see in the passage in Timothy. Timothy had a faith that was passed down to him through his grandmother. Thank God for grandmothers, amen? It was passed down to him through his mother. But there's no mention of Timothy's father. And yet Timothy was blessed the way many of the Timothys are not blessed in our culture. Because Timothy had a surrogate daddy, a spiritual father by the name of the Apostle Paul, who helped to shape Timothy into a man who was not only a man of faith, but he was a man who was able to call the man out of men. Because he had a father surrogate. And he got that father surrogate from the body of Christ that helped him to deal with his father injury. Now, where do these father wounds come from? Father pain, it comes from the absent father. It comes from fathers who are physically absent due to divorce, due to separation, due to having a child out of wedlock. That's what's so toxic about children being born out of wedlock, is that it almost ensures an underfathered generation. And 72% of African American children are born out of wedlock, and we are woefully underfathered. I don't know if you know this, but 63% of African American children live without a father in the home. The aberration is the norm now. It's the norm. It's the absent father that causes father wounds. But it's also not only the father who is physically absent, but the one who's emotionally absent. The one who is there but does not care. The one whose goals are so captivating to him that he doesn't have time for his children. James Dobson tells us that the average middle-class father with a good job spends 37 seconds a day with his small children. And we're wondering what's wrong with the men of this generation. They're underfathered. And fathers who are absent. They create young men who are confused about their role in the earth. They know they are men, but they don't know how to direct all of that energy, all of that testosterone. They don't know what to do with it. And because of that, they often try to prove their manhood in unhealthy and toxic ways that are injurious to themselves and to their family. What happened? Daddy wasn't there. Father wound comes from the controlling father. The controlling father. It comes from fathers who try to control every aspect of their family's daily life. You know men like this. These are men who dictate everything in their house, dictate everything in their home, and they punish the uniqueness of their children. They punish the uniqueness of their family. They reward conformity and punish uniqueness. These fathers not only try to control daily life, they tend to try to control as well the ultimate life choices. When their children grow up, they go to college, they begin to live their own life. They're still trying to control them. They're trying to control everything from the brand of toothpaste they choose to the color of car they buy. This controlling fatherly image, it creates young men and even, yes, young women who either have an inordinate desire and need to please their father and don't pursue their own lives, or it makes them extremely sensitive to the influence of men, and particularly older men and men in authority in their lives. And so they spend their lives shadow boxing with a daddy who's not even there. Where do these father wounds come from? They come from the absent father. They come from the controlling father. They also come from the abusive father. Those who are verbally abusive. Friend, what you say matters. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words break my heart. The words of fathers break the hearts of children. What you say matters. Fathers who are verbally abusive. They are abusive through toxic language, but they also are abusive through toxic silence. Silence is a form of abuse. If you never have anything to say, if you never have any input, that's injurious to your children. That's why a lot of men don't know how to talk. They've never seen a man talk. They've never seen a man talk about anything but weather and sports, and they embrace their lives with this sophomoric naivete. And they're not interested in anything that really matters. And then you get somebody like me and somebody who has a heart for people and community, and they think we're fanatical. They don't know. They've never seen it. They're not only verbally abusive. Fathers also who are physically abusive, who strike their children. Fathers who are sexually abusive. This is a source of father pain. Abusive fathers create young men who have a profound distrust of men. A profound distrust and a fear of men even. So much so that they don't even really like relating to men. They don't have any male friends that are close to them because they fear that connection. They fear that controlling influence. They fear that abusive impact. What are some indicators of a father wound? I'm glad you're interested. Here they are. Here they are. This is how you know you might be dealing with a father wound. I want them to list them because I want you to see this. Indicators of a father wound. Distrust of men. Distrust of and refusal to submit to authority. By the way, this is one of the greatest challenges for our nation right now, is this refusal in the workplace to submit to authority. And it has to do with father injury. It's the father that teaches a young man that authority is a good thing. It's a father. That's passed on through the father. And we are losing our competitive edge in the world because we've got a whole generation of workers who won't listen to the boss. It's replete throughout our culture. And it goes back to father injury. Here's the next one, role confusion. Have no clue about who they are. Inability to connect with men. A preference for female friendships. Let me give you a pointer, friend. If you only talk to women, that's father injury. And there's so many 20-somethings today. If you pay attention to them, they only talk to women. They don't hang out with men. That's father pain. And the men they hang out with have as much father pain as they are, and they create this little small feminized conclave of men who have the same issues that they have, the same issues with authority, the same issues with talking, the same issues with honesty, the same issues with pursuing their dreams with confidence. Here's the next one. In order to need for respect and affirmation. Now, every man wants respect, but you know there are some people who are oversensitive. Anything you say, you disrespected them. That's insecurity that comes from a father injury. Anything. You just look at them, I can't believe you disrespected me like that. I didn't even notice you, actually. I wasn't even thinking about you. Here's the next one, a lack of confidence and self-worth, because scientific studies have proven that confidence is usually passed down through the daddy. It's something about a boy who has a man who says you can do anything you want to do. That's different from a mother saying that. Then a lack of discipline. We're undisciplined generation, because discipline is passed on through the father. For a boy, his mother tells him not to do something. You know, he just, okay. But he goes in his room and he does whatever he's going to do. But when a man is respected in the house, he creates an environment of discipline. And it changes what happens in a young man's life and in his psyche. Let me give you this. Ronald Palmer had just lost his job for the third time. Twice he got fired, once he was laid off. He just didn't like bosses. He didn't like managers. He didn't like being told what to do. He felt like they were trying to manipulate him, trying to just get what they wanted. And even though he knew there was nothing wrong with what they were saying per se, there was something in his soul that could not respond submissively to what he was being told. He didn't understand it. He just knew he didn't like it. And even though he was getting paid, he couldn't figure out why. He just didn't like the work environment. After losing his third job, his wife said something that hurt his feelings, that cut him real deep. In anger, she looked at him and said, listen, I don't plan on being married to a man who can't keep a job. This motivated him to do something he would not normally do. He actually went to talk to one of his friends. And his friend said these words, and it began the change of momentum in his life. He said, do you think that maybe some of the challenges that you're having in the workplace are related to your relationship with your father? Ronald Palmer had never thought of that. His father was a controlling, verbally abusive man. Ronald did not like his father. He loved his father, but did not like his father. He spent much of his childhood afraid of him and much of his adulthood avoiding him. He only saw his dad on holidays, and he was fine with that. But in that moment, he connected the fact that what he was hearing when a boss told him what to do was the same controlling voice of his father. He was shadow boxing with a man who was not even in the room. And this is the danger of the father wound. The father wound does not just impact you. Ronald Palmer found out that it was his father injury that was compromising his marriage. It was compromising his career. It was compromising his financial stability. And ultimately, it was compromising his parenting. And it would ultimately, if he didn't change it, it would compromise his very life. It would compromise his legacy. The father wound does not stay in one domain of your life. It begins to slowly permeate every domain where relationships with other men are important. It's one of the most toxic injuries of the soul. And what is so challenging about it is that most of us have father injury. And we only have a few healthy people in our culture. And so those of us who are healthy, we've got to do more than just raise our own children. We've got to do more than just take care of our own families. We've got to include at least 1 or 2 boys in our family outings to help fight this toxic father injury. How do you medicate the wound? How do you medicate the father wound? Here's some prescriptions from God. First of all, you have to release your father. Let the church say release. What I mean by that is that you've got to forgive your father and let go of the need to punish him. Most of us feel like we've got to keep punishing people who hurt us in our minds. Understand, you've got to forgive, and you forgive for yourself. Because that which you cannot forgive, it's impacting you profoundly. I become what I hate. That's why you got to strive not to hate anything or hate anybody. Because you're so actively engaged in toxic thoughts about the person that you become a victim to those same ways of thinking. You got to release your father. Now understand this. If possible, you want to actually go talk to your father and tell your father how what happened hurt you and how it impacted you, but you love him and you want to be in his life, and you want to reestablish some form of relationship, though it may take some time. Now here's what I want you to get. Here's what you're going to see. Most of you will see this. Some of you will be disappointed because you won't see it. What you're going to find is that your father has softened with the years. Have you ever noticed that most men soften with time? Yeah. Your father has softened with time. And here's the deal. He really wants the same thing you want, but he's not as big of a man as you are. Sometimes you got to be a bigger man. You know what one of my father's injuries was? I knew my daddy loved me, but he never told me. And one day I said, you know, why am I waiting for this man to tell me he loves me? Why don't I just tell him? So I just started telling my daddy, I love you, Dad. Do you know he tells me he loves me all the time now? Somebody had to be the bigger man. Somebody had to be and that might be you. You might be a bigger man than your daddy. And you ought to be, because you're saved. You've been walking with God. You've been receiving biblical teaching. You ought to be a bigger man than your daddy. Why wouldn't you be a bigger man than your daddy? Here's the next one. You not only have to release your father, you have to relate to men. Healing comes through connection. And it comes through connection with men. There are parts of your soul that will be healed just by being in community with men who see something special in you, men who encourage you, men who share with you, listen, I got the same story, and this is what I did, and this is how I handled that. You've got to relate to men who've experienced the same thing, and one of the ways that you do that here at Greater Mount Zion is you join a small group. You join a small group with men in it.